You going to be able to sit still? She has a coloring book? Coloring book? Oh, good. Local Paul is very expert at surprising me at what the topic should be. At least 8 hours advance notice. So the topic for this weekend is the teachings of Prahalad or the prayers of Prahalad Maharaj. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, it's described by Krishnadas Kaviraj that every day when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was residing in Jagannath Puri, early in the morning he would go to see Lord Jagannath, and the pujaris would give him prasad of Lord Jagannath, and he would go then to see Haridas Thakur, and he'd give prasad of Jagannath to Haridas Thakur, and have some Krishna Katha with Haridas for some time. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would go to Gopinath, temple of Gopinath, where Gadadhar Pandit resided, and worshiped Tota Gopinath. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would sit for hours every day hearing Gadadhar Pandit recite Srimad Bhagavatam. And part of the description is he would recite the pastimes of Dhruva Maharaj and Prahalad Maharaj from beginning to end. And Mahaprabhu, hearing the full narration, would say, "Say it again, say it again, say it again." Not like, "I've already heard that one. You have tell me another one." Go to more esoteric subject matters. Let's go to the 10th canto, etc. Dhruva Maharaj and Prahalad Maharaj are very important, very, very, very elevated, very essential sections of Srimad Bhagavatam, very much loved sections of Srimad Bhagavatam, worth hearing again and again and again and again and again and again, even if you're Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Of course, if you're Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and you're hearing for Gadadhar Pandit, what could be better than that? Srila Prabhupada would often speak about the whole range of subject matter of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, and would indicate, for example, hearing about the process of creation is one of the 10 essential topics of Srimad Bhagavatam. Lord Vishnu's creation and the sub-creation of Lord Brahma. 2 out of 10, 1/5 of the entire Srimad Bhagavatam, subject matter-wise. So that's no less important than hearing the pastimes of Krishna. Someone was raising this question. I can't remember exactly, but it was along the same line of this mistaken sense of hierarchy of subject matter. In one sense, there's hierarchy of subject matter, and in another sense, in the sense that our line of disciplic succession emphasized again and again is all those subject matters are fully transcendental, and they're, in one sense, equally important and equally valuable and equally relishable. According to Prahalad Maharaj, the mercy that he received from Lord Nrsingadev surpassed the mercy even the goddess of fortune received from the personality of Godhead, Lord Narayana. Prahalad Maharaj was such an intimate associate. Perhaps you're a little familiar with one of the commentaries on Srimad Bhagavatam called Brihat Bhagavatamrita. Brihat Bhagavatamrita was written by Sanatana Goswami. Very elevated text, translated by the BVT. with Sanatana Goswami's commentary on the book that he wrote. And it's in two parts. Part 2 has 2 volumes, this thick, so that thick, and then part 1 is that thick also. In part 1, at the beginning of part 2, Sanatana Goswami writes, all of part 1 was just a preamble for part 2. The preamble is, so in that part 1, it's a historical description, not a fiction description, historical description of Narada Muni going to Allahabad at the Shashvamedha Ghat during the month of Magh. Very auspicious time. According to scripture, it gives the scriptural references, what's auspicious about it. And he, Narada, and many sages were at the side of the Shashvamedha Ghat, performing austerities and engaging in Krishna Katha, Hari Katha. And they were appreciating, wow, how fortunate we are. The scripture says this and this and this, and here we are, doing this and this. How fortunate. So they started getting into the mood of appreciating the good fortune that had come to them. And then came a question. Who is the greatest recipient of good fortune, the mercy of the Supreme Lord? Who is the greatest recipient? So as they were sitting at the steps, the bank of the Shashvamedha Ghat, one aristocratic Brahmin came with all of his assembly, and by the side of the Ghat, he set up a place of worship for his Shalagram Shiva. Spectacular presentation of music and opulent puja, and Narada Muni jumped up, seeing all of this, and ran to this Brahmana and said, my dear sir, it's very clear. You are the greatest recipient of the mercy of the Supreme Lord. And he gave his reasons, because of this, this, and this, and this. The Brahmana wanted to cover his ears. He's like, no. I'm not at all the greatest recipient of the mercy of the Supreme Lord. You're saying these things, but if you really want to know who is super excellent in opulently worshiping the form of the Lord, there's such and such king. He's way up there in opulence and devotion and submission. Go there. You'll find someone who's truly the recipient of the mercy of the Lord. So Narada goes there, and that king says, no. And the next person. And everyone that gets glorified, Narada goes and sees them doing what the former person said they do, and he just enthusiastically says, you are clearly the greatest recipient of the mercy of the Lord for these reasons. And again, the person goes, no, you don't understand. These are my disqualifications. And it keeps going and going and going and going and going, and guess where it ends up? The gopis. That's where it ends up. And Krishna discloses to the queens of Dwarka, including Satyabhama, 16,107 queens came. Satyabhama didn't come. Krishna scolded her. Send that Satrajati here. She should hear this. Specifically, Sanatana Goswami comments, he called her Satrajiti, the daughter of Satrajit, because of the offense of Satrajit to Krishna. Satrajiti, send her here. The contrary one. He was pleased, but he's culpable. Anyway, Krishna describes the quality of love that he has. He said, I've been wanting to disclose this to all of you, my queens. What's in my heart? Why it is that I have such love for the gopis in Vrindavan? And if the answer is because of their love for him. It's a whole long description. And that's where it ends. They're the greatest recipients of the mercy of the Supreme Lord. Part 1 ends, and Part 2 begins saying, this was just a prelude, a warm-up for the message that he wants to deliver. It's like Sambandha. But in the course of that long narration, Sanatana Goswami comments, actually, they're all the greatest recipients of Krishna's mercy. They're all pure devotees of the Lord. But in the realm of pure devotion, there is perfect, more perfect, most perfect. That's also allowed. So they're perfect, not lesser, greater. They're perfect, but more perfect, most perfect. And Bhagavatam's teaching, because this Brihat Bhagavatamrita is a commentary on Bhagavatam. It's one of the ways to describe what it is. That's what the Bhagavatam teaches, that's what Lord Chaitanya teaches, because they're the same. Lord Chaitanya's teachings and the Srimad Bhagavatam are the same. You can say, Srimad Bhagavatam is the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, or you can say the teachings of Lord Chaitanya are the Srimad Bhagavatam. Backwards or forwards, either way you like it. They're both right. So this section about Prahlad's prayers is describing his pure devotion. Why did the Lord appear? Because of the pure devotion of Prahlad. He could have destroyed Hiranyakashipu a million ways. He came to give his direct darshan, direct association to his dear devotee Prahlad. The section, so I'm going to start with some of the early prayers of Prahlad to Lord Nrsingadev, but before Prahlad offers prayers, first Lord Nrsingadev appears, big battle, Nrsingadev kills Hiranyakashipu. The soldiers of Hiranyakashipu, they come rushing forward to avenge the death of their great leader. And they're also destroyed. Lord Nrsingadev manifested thousands of arms and was roaring. The whole palace was shaking, the whole earth was shaking. His roaring was so fierce. And after dismantling, disembodying all those thousands of powerful soldiers, the demigods had witnessed all this, and Hiranyakashipu was the terror of the universe. So they were very relieved that this horrible, terrifying personality was destroyed by the personality of Godhead. There's a whole chapter of very, very elevated prayers, each according to their position or their realization or their relationship with him. They're all devotees, the demigods. They're all mixed in their devotion. That's why they're demigods. That's why they're not in Vaikuntha. They're wanting to control something, to enjoy the position of being the controller of something. So they're studied very carefully their prayers, and there's several sections like this. They disclose who they are through their prayers. They're just their appreciation for the Supreme Lord in terms of the lens that they look at him through. They're disclosing who they are, as well as their appreciation for him. But after a whole chapter of very, very eloquent, beautiful prayers, Lord Sringadeva is still roaring. So Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, they realized the reason that Lord Sringadeva appeared was because of Prahlad, not because of us, because of Prahlad. So they approached Prahlad and said, can you go pull him down, pacify the Lord. Being instructed by those whom Prahlad considered to be his superiors, he went forward. And as he went forward, he prostrated himself, full dandavats, reaching for the lotus feet of Lord Sringadeva. Lord Sringadeva stopped roaring. And he picked Prahlad up and placed his hand upon, or paw, upon the head of Prahlad. And the verses say, all material contamination fled at once, as if he had material contamination. And he became empowered. Because he's just a little boy, he hasn't even gone to school, hardly. But he was empowered by that touch of the Supreme Lord's hand to speak very, very beautiful prayers. And on the Shringa Chaturdasi, what I spoke about was the first of his prayers. And so the first of his prayers is an expression of humility. Here he is, the person for whom the personality of Godhead has appeared. The demigods have been unsuccessful. They know that he will be successful. He's encouraged by them, instructed by them. And his first prayer is just professing his disqualification. Humility. That's the first qualification. Amanadam, damdipam. Humility and pridelessness, according to Krishna's instruction in Bhagavad Gita, the first items of knowledge. I'll read what he says. How is it possible for me, who have been born in a family of asuras, to offer suitable prayers to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead? I mean, ask any one of ourselves, ask yourself, what's your qualification to offer prayers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Answer. Even until now, all the demigods headed by Lord Brahma and all the saintly persons could not satisfy the Lord by streams of excellent words. Although such persons are very qualified, being in the mode of goodness, then what is to be said of me? I'm not at all qualified. There's this word that's in many of our prayers. We just kind of say it without thinking of what its meaning is. Namaha. Namaha Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna. It means negation of false ego. Literally, not maha, not maha. Negation of false ego. If you negate false ego, what's left? Well, void, right? Or Brahman. If you're an impersonalist or voidist, that's what's left. For a devotee, what's left is devotion. But there's something standing in between us and devotion, and that's our dear friend, false ego. And everything else that connected and attached to our false ego. The rest of the subtle body and the gross body and all of our fruitive activities. in pursuit of enjoyment through false ego. Misconception of what's going to make me happy. Misconception of self. So it's very natural. The first step, you could say, conversely, without this first step, you're not going to go to the second step. You can't jump over it. Jump over humility and land in transcendence. So Prahalad is exhibiting this essential quality. He has the qualification. He genuinely feels, I don't have the qualification. In his Brihat Bhagavatamrita, Sanatana Goswami gives that definition, or symptom. A symptom of humility is when one, although one is eminently qualified to perform a particular activity, one feels that one is not qualified. I'll say it again. Nice. A symptom, evidence of humility is, he's speaking of these personalities who are being approached by Narada Muni saying, oh, you're the greatest recipient of the Lord's mercy. And they are, but they feel themselves not qualified. He is indicating this is humility. This is the starting point of their qualification. What's that again? Although one may be eminently qualified to perform a particular service, one feels that one isn't. This is a symptom of humility. That doesn't, if you feel not qualified, then I suppose you could just not do the service because I don't feel qualified.
Mm-hmm.
You get you get an F in your exam if you give that response. Oh, I'm not qualified. Someone else can mop the floor. I can eat the sabji, I'm qualified. Humility is a prerequisite for this removal of false ego and in its place, true ego. The true ego is I am Krishna's eternal servant. That's true ego. Then there's details and details. What's my relationship with Krishna? What's the nature of the exchange of love between myself and Krishna? But you can't enter into that without humility. So Prahalad is in the first verse speaking these words of humility. He's feeling it. And he's expressing it. So you want to guess what the very next message that Prahalad speaks is? If it follows logically, well, there's two verses, I'll read them, and Prabhupada's purport, but the message is, although one may not be qualified, or although one may be materially qualified, regardless of material qualification or material disqualification, the real qualification is bhakti. He says it in a positive way, and then he says it in a negative way. Inclusive and exclusive. He says, to just summarize, one may have all these superlative qualifications. This, that, the other thing. One may have all those. But if one doesn't have devotion, then one can't satisfy the Supreme Lord. But if one has devotion, even you're an animal, you can satisfy the Supreme Lord. He offers Gajendra as an example. Because of bhakti, Gajendra satisfied the Supreme Lord and he came. And he protected him. So I'm like Gajendra. I'm in the form of a human, but I'm born in a demon's family. I'm more disqualified than an elephant. Essentially says the same thing the next verse. He says that one is in the family of dog eaters, but as a devotee who dedicates body, mind, and words to the service of the Supreme Lord, that person is more exalted than a brahmana that is decorated with all the brahminical qualities and qualifications and items of knowledge. Because that person can deliver not only himself but his whole family, but a brahmana who's not a devotee can't even deliver himself, but to speak of anybody else. It's this message is expressed in multiple places in the Bhagavatam and elsewhere, but certainly within the Bhagavatam. And it's the basis for the Hare Krishna movement. Or this message and its corollary messages are the foundation for Bhaktisiddhanta's Vaishnava Vishva Raja Sabha, the international, the universal association of devotees of the Lord, as Prabhupada also continued, just called it by a different name, Western sounding name rather than the Sanskrit sounding name. International Society for Krishna Consciousness. The basis for it is the Srimad Bhagavatam. Even one may, by birth, be in a not very nice situation. Like Prahalad was not in a very nice situation by birth. Or Haridas Thakur was not in a very nice situation by birth. But most exalted, because of bhakti. And the exhibition and an essential element of that devotion is great humility. Look at Haridas Thakur. How humble was Haridas Thakur? Or Narada in his previous life was a Shudra. He became perfected soul from the position of being born as a Shudra. Now he was born as a Shudra. He says at the end of this 7th canto, how did he become a Shudra? He was a Gandharva who was cursed by the sages to fall and become a Shudra. Because he was proud of his good looks as a Gandharva and his singing voice, and he was lusty. He was using his good looks and singing voice to woo the girls in the heavenly planets. And the sages couldn't understand his mentality, and they cursed him. You're a Shudra. You shouldn't be in the heavenly planets. Take birth in the material world as a Shudra. So he did. But then he met the Bhaktivedantas and became a perfected being. It's not the criterion is willingness to receive transcendental association, and fully receiving transcendental association. Then bhakti can awaken. That's what happened with Prahalad. In the womb of his mother, Kayadu, Prahalad heard Srimad Bhagavatam from Narada Muni. And he became a perfected being. Disqualified by birth, but qualified by association. So let's read what the exact words of Prahalad. This is text 9 and 10 of chapter 9. One may possess wealth, an aristocratic family, beauty, austerity, education, sensory enterprise, luster, influence, physical strength, diligence, intelligence, and mystic yoga power. But I think that even by all these qualifications, one cannot satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead. However, One can satisfy the Lord simply by devotional service. Gajendra did this, and thus the Lord was satisfied with him. There's a short purport. I'll read the next text 10. If a Brahmana has all 12 of the Brahminical qualifications, Prabhupada puts in brackets, there's a certain scripture that describes what these are, 12 Brahminical qualifications, but is not a devotee and is averse to the lotus feet of the Lord, he is certainly lower than a devotee who is a dog eater. Not just born in a dog eater family, but a dog eater. And why would a devotee be a dog eater? I said, even if, not like a devotee is going to be a dog eater, but even if, apichet, that devotee is more exalted than a Brahmana with all Brahminical qualifications if that Brahmana is not a devotee. So he is certainly lower than a devotee who is a dog eater, but who has dedicated everything, mind, words, and activities, wealth, and life to the Supreme Lord. Which means, by that dedication of all these things, they'll be elevated above that behavior. They're not going to say, okay, I've got a concession. I can be a dog eater and devotee at the same time. Pretty cool. By that dedication, they'll be elevated above that behavior. Yes? Such a devotee is better than such a Brahmana because the devotee can purify his whole family, whereas the so-called Brahmana, in a position of false prestige, cannot purify even himself. Prabhupada in the purport describes the scripture that speaks of the 12 Brahminical qualifications. The learned Brahmana is considered best among the divisions of Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra, but a devotee born in a low Chandala family is better than such Brahmanas, not to speak of the Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and others. A devotee is better than anyone, for he is in the transcendental position of the Brahman platform. Prabhupada quotes last verse of second to the last verse of chapter 14, the three modes of nature, and how one can transcend the three modes of nature. That's one of the questions Arjuna asked. Wow, how do you get there? How do you get beyond the modes of nature? By full surrender to Krishna. Mam Shayogya Vicharena Bhakti Yogena Sevate Saganan Samatityaitan Brahma Bhuyaya Kalpata. It will become situated in the Brahman platform by undivided devotion. One's carried beyond the modes of nature. So that dog eating propensity, or whatever it is, other propensity, by that full surrender to the personality of God, you rise above it. You rise above it. You're not, that's born of the modes of nature, and devotional service is above the modes of nature. You take shelter, devotional service, it carries you above the modes of nature. And then Prabhupada, the last paragraph, speaks of his European and American disciples, who were also born in not very fortunate situation, considering the standard of Vedic culture, not a very fortunate situation. But by the association of the holy name and transcendental scriptures, basically the same thing that goes back to the first canto, chapter 5, where Vyasadeva, being Trikalagya, looked into the future and he saw the symptoms of the age of Kali, And he saw the degradation that would come, just like those of us that look around and see the degradation that's happening. It's kind of scary. So the brutality, and I've just had a couple of really long airplane flights. I don't mind flying, but I don't like the media that they have so readily available on those long flights. But I was just out of curiosity, wanting to see how many of what those people are watching is violence. And every single one. There was one person watching cartoons. And everyone else, they call it action movies. It's just, brutal violence. And it's very graphic. Somebody gets shot and blood goes splattering all over the place. And again, and again, and again, and again, and again, and the same movie, and again, and again, and again, and again, and again. And they finish that when they go to the next one, and again, and again, and again. Anyone that's been around for a while, I remember hearing this from my grandmother. Oh, the younger generation. And everyone that gets, the younger generation, when they get older, they look at the younger generation and go, oh, the younger generation. It just keeps going like that. Down, like a whirlpool, down and down and down. Acceleratingly down. I remember something like 15 years ago. Some of you may know my godbrother Sridhar Swami. He was in Bombay for years together, helping Prabhupada in the realm of developing the congregation for Juhu. Huge congregation in Juhu. So he was, very active in that. And we were co-GBC in New York for a few years. He wanted to break from Juhu, so he came to New York. And I remember one class that he gave, he was saying, how many centuries of invasion from, foreign countries ruling India, and how they were unable to break the culture of India, particularly in South India, but just unable to break the culture. But within his point was, he got into some numbers and some names of some different periods of time of this group and that group and the other group, but they couldn't break it. They tried. The British were very, very deliberate in trying, but they couldn't. But then he said, 5-star TV. And now it's not just 5-star TV. Remember visiting in Vrindavan, going to visit the Madan Mohan temple, and then from there the Radha Damodar temple, and passing by shops in Boy Bazaar to get to the Radha Damodar temple. And there were like 100 people crowded around one stall in one of the shops in Boy Bazaar. I wondered, what's going on? And so I kind of wiggled my way through to see what's going on. And there was a little TV screen about that big. And there were 100 people trying to see what's on that little TV screen in Boy Bazaar, instead of going to the temple in Vrindavan. What to speak of advancements that technology had made to prove the culture without all the detail. It's very sad. Very sad. Very sad. So the qualification, I'll just add one other thing. I don't know if this is a fact, but one of my good friends, God brothers, told me. Microsoft and Google, they target who they want to get to work for Microsoft and Google. And there's a certain group of Chinese and a certain group of Indians, and they've got it narrowed down to not only where in India, but which Gotra makes the best workers for Google and Microsoft. And they go after those people and give them, stuff. Because they have the brain capacity, because of good breeding, but then they're like buying them into the degradation program. The brahmanas that are no longer brahmanas, they become technology people, sutras. Unfortunately. What to speak of, and they produce something that is used by whatever the ethics of the person to get that something from them. Yeah. So how to restore culture? That was the concern of Vyas. Here's this Kali Yuga coming. It was at the beginning of Kali Yuga when he saw what was coming, into its advanced stages. And his conclusion was, make knowledge readily available to the public because they're not going to remember, so put it in a written form. And then Narada told him, write this Srimad Bhagavatam, where you simply glorify the personality of Godhead. So that's exactly what Prahlad is doing. And how do you glorify the personality of Godhead? It starts with humility, and then the means to approach him. The means to approach him is through devotion, not by these 12 qualifications or all the other ones that are mentioned. Intelligence, high education, good beauty, great riches, and things that people consider to be, the standard of a successful person. That's not going to attract the personality of Godhead. Devotion alone is going to attract him. The one who attracts him, one has everything, because he's the source of everything. How much power did Prahlad have? He had such power that the most powerful person in the whole universe couldn't do anything. And that most powerful person couldn't recognize the power. In Sanskrit language, it's tattva vibrama. He couldn't see. It was there before him. He couldn't see. He thought it was something else. And then he saw Lord Shringadev, and he couldn't see Lord Shringadev either. He saw Lord Shringadev, but he thought, oh, he's a powerful person like me. I'm more powerful. Some mystic power, but I have mystic power. So following right behind humility is this very, very, very special appreciation for devotion. Of course, in the mood of humility. And that devotion the first verse is devotion can attract the Supreme Lord. And the second one is that devotion to the Supreme Lord makes one more qualified than not only people that have worldly material qualification, even theistic apparent qualification. Excellences that are endowments of a Brahmana who's not a devotee is not as exalted as a person who's a dog eater, who has dedicated his body, mind, and words in service of the Supreme Lord, which means all those yogakshema baham yaham, as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. Who knows that verse? The meaning, more or less, unto those who those
without
who
any deviation, those who continuously do the devotion to me with more loving bhakti.
Yeah.
So I will take care of their yogam, their wellness, their
Whatever they have,
I will preserve
I'll
it.
preserve it. Whatever they need, I'll give it. So who's more powerful, Prahlad or Hiranyakashipu? Now, what is that power? The power is bhakti. Because of that bhakti, he has the shelter of the personality of Godhead, who is all powerful. Now, in these two verses spoken by Prahlad, those that have wealth, education, beauty, these are fruits of piety. Janma, Aishvarya, Shruta, and Shri. Those four are material qualifications that come from piety. And then there's beyond piety, or the pinnacle of piety, the Brahmana in society, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. He's the chief of all pious people. And such person, very strictly following codes of Brahminical culture, may become endowed with certain perfections of Brahminical culture beyond merely the fruits of piety. But if that person, they may not be a devotee. And if so, the real qualification, greater than that qualification, is the qualification of devotion. Whatever their behavior may be, or birth or position in worldly estimation may be, because that person, another way of saying the same thing is Prabhupada saying very simply, better a sincere sweeper in the street than a puffed up charlatan who has mystic powers or some other kinds of exhibition of capacity or strength. Better a sincere sweeper in the street, whatever your position of service is, according to nature, given by birth, or psychophysical nature, that can change. Nature can change. Change of nature can be cultivated. There's a series of verses in detail described in Krishna's instructions to Uddhava in Uddhava Gita, where nature how to change one's nature. It's very elaborate, like this 11 or 12 part prescription of how one's nature can change. But it all rests upon this one thing, devotion. There are things, but those things rest upon devotion. And without devotion, nature isn't going to change. And that is to say, the degrading influences of the bad association that's abundantly surrounding us in this world will affect negatively not only us, but just going back to this other topic, our children or youth. The deterrent for that degradation is bhakti. Certainly, passing on values to your children is some protection. It's something that parents do just naturally. But what's to protect your children from succumbing to values other than your values? Because association is sangat sanjayate kama, according to Krishna's teaching in Bhagavad Gita. It's elsewhere also. You take on the qualities of those with whom you associate. So what's the protection for us and for our children and our community? The mission of Krishna consciousness, how's it going to be successful? It rests upon bhakti. So how to awaken bhakti? Because everything rests upon bhakti. Well, it starts with humility, but then also appreciating, this is the very, the second and third verses of Prahlad, that's appreciating the exaltedness of bhakti. It's not a small thing. It's a beginning. It's not everything, but it's very important to there's this little saying, your attention goes to that which you place value in. Supposing a family, it's not so common in modern times, but supposing some family has some hereditary heirlooms, some items, some gold or jewels or some valuables that's passed on from generation to generation. So not only because my great grandparents, they valued this, it has value. Things may change in the world, but that we always have this. So you put it in the same place and you hold it to be of some value. That's like, saying gold or some precious something or others. That wonderful narration of the touchstone of Sanatana Goswami, Sparshamani. Some of you may not know that story. Just so those of you that know it, you probably heard it 25 times. Sanatana Goswami lived in Vrindavan. He was Prime Minister of a third of India, and he left it to go live under different trees in Vrindavan with one cloth. He left all that aristocracy for a life of devotion to Krishna in Vrindavan. Another Brahmana, a Shaivite Brahmana, also lived in Vrindavan, and he was very poor, and he heard that Sanatana Goswami had a touchstone. So he thought, no harm in asking. He's very known to be very noble and magnanimous and very benevolent. I'll go ask Sanatana Goswami if he can give in charity his touchstone. Then I can solve my poverty problem. So I went to Sanatana Goswami, appreciated him properly because he had appreciation, and said, you're very magnanimous, you're known to be very magnanimous and kind. I heard you have a touchstone. May I ask to receive that from you in charity? And Sanatana Goswami said, sure. And the man said, well, what is it? He said, it's over there in the rubbish pile. And was surprised he was keeping his touchstone in the rubbish pile, but he went and found the touchstone. Oh, thank you. So he went back to his home. He had an iron pot for his drinking vessel. He touched the touchstone to the iron pot and it turned to gold. He was thrilled. So he went around finding different metal things and touching the touchstone to the metal, and it became gold. Thinking, this is great. I've solved my poverty problem. Now I have so much gold. But he was a Brahmana, so he started putting 2 + 2 and getting 4. And said to himself, why did Sanatana Goswami keep this in the rubbish pile? He must have something more valuable. It was eating the inside. What's that more valuable thing? So we went back and asked Sanatana Goswami, were you keeping this in the rubbish pile because you have something more valuable? Oh, yes, something much more valuable. Well, would you be very kind to give that in charity to me too? And Sanatana Goswami said, sure. On one condition. Yes, what's that? Take the touchstone and go throw it in the Jamuna River. Then I'll give you the more valuable thing. Brahma looked at the touchstone. Sanatana Goswami. He trusted Sanatana Goswami implicitly. Wouldn't cheat him. So with courage, he took the touchstone and threw it in Jamuna. Came back to Sanatana Goswami and he gave him the holy name. Because it's far more valuable than, like Prahalad is saying, than anything, riches and anything of material substance. One of the 4 essential verses in the entire 18,000 Srimad Bhagavatam verses, it says, know that which is seen to have value apart from Krishna, know that to be my illusory energy. The central verse of the whole Srimad Bhagavatam. Prahalad understands it. Prahalad's teaching us the same message, just in a different way. All these wonderful things that are fruits of piety, that's something material. It's something material. You can't stack up enough material things and get to the spiritual. It doesn't work that way. But even a little bit of spiritual, a sincere spiritual dedication to the Supreme Lord, that surpasses the whole stack of material things and the fruits of those material things. In fact, in Queen Kunti's prayers, she says, those material things, those fruits of piety, make one proud. And if you're proud, then you can't feelingly call to the Supreme Lord. You're disqualified. It's not, the message isn't being pious. The message is be pious, but more important is be a devotee. Be a pious devotee. Be a devotee. Because it's through that devotion to Krishna that Krishna can be attracted, and when Krishna is attracted, you have everything, including the removal of tendencies for impiety. To the very root, bhakti alone can do that. And piety can't do that. Piety doesn't take away tendency. You can build another tendency, but the other, the modes of nature are such, according to 14th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. When the mode of goodness is there, there's always also ignorance and passion. It's competing for supremacy. After some time, passion is going to prevail and ignorance is going to prevail, even for a good person. What to speak of in Kali Yuga association, where there's lots of bad association. Lots of bad association. Those of you that are in the workplace, you know what the bad association is. For those of you that go to school, you know what the bad association is. Lots of bad association. What's the antidote? Value is being passed on from parents to children in community members to other community members. That's very helpful. It's insufficient. Bhakti is essential. That's the Bhagavatam message. Put the 1 in front of the 0, then you have 10. Put the 1 in front of 2 zeros, you have 100. Put the 1 in front of 3 zeros, you have 1,000. But without the 1, it's 0. However many zeros. Put the 1 in front. That's another simple way of saying the same thing. That awakened devotion to the Supreme. That's our mission in our personal lives and in our families and in our communities and in the world around us. One of the features of this ISKCON 50, I'll end with this, is we're celebrating, but we're also communicating to others. There's something wonderful here. And of course, increasing book distribution is one of the ways to get that something wonderful. Somebody, it was Kaladri, maybe some of you know Kaladri. He sent this TED Talk link. He didn't, I knew he wasn't going to waste my time, so I went to this TED Talk link. And it was an Indian gentleman who is a neurologist in New York City. And he starts his TED Talk saying, I came to New York and I thought happiness is New York City, New York City, New York City. And I went to these places, those places, the other places. And etc., etc. You know, this museum, that museum, this exhibition, this philharmonic. Oh, so much culture. So it was new. Then he tells this little story that he was passing somewhere and somebody gave him a card. He said, you know, happiness is within. He didn't pay any attention, just put it in his jacket. You know, he wasn't finding happiness doing all these things. 1 year later, he picked out the card. It was a Hare Krishna devotee gave him a card. It said, chant to be happy. He says this TED talk, you know, 20 minutes of, then, you know, picture of Prabhupada writing the Jaladuta. And it gave step telling the whole story of Prabhupada's life. I mean, not the whole story, but the TED talk version of Prabhupada's life. And his message is happiness is within. And he got them all to chant the Maha Mantra once. So, then this is a practicing neurologist with all these figures. How many, does anybody want to guess how many neurons there are in the brain? And I forget the number he gave, it's, you know, 10 billion or something like that. Anyway. We all want to be peaceful. We want happiness. What's how do you get that happiness? You're not going to get it by piety and the fruits of piety, and enjoying the fruits of piety, or becoming having all 12 political qualifications. If you're not a devotee, so be a devotee. That which you value, like this, you put the touchstone in the garbage because he has something. Attention goes to that which you value. That's what the Bhagavatam is doing. It's what Prahalad is doing. I mean, Lord Nrsingadev doesn't need to hear about the attractiveness of bhakti. He's attracted by bhakti, but he's just saying it. And by saying it, the Lord is very pleased. The roaring stopped. His anger subsided because of just hearing the pure heart of Prahalad. So we'll continue, I guess, tomorrow. Hearing more of Prahlad's teachings. Maybe do a sneak preview and look it up tonight or tomorrow morning. Here's some more that Prahalad has to say. Any discussion? Questions?
Guru Maharaj, I have two questions.
Okay.
One is from the beginning, as you mentioned, perfect, most perfect, and more perfect.
No, that perfect, more, and then most.
So, as a sadhaka who's a neophyte devotee or beginning, how should we see this relation without making an offense?
How we should see the relation?
These three relations together, and
be very careful. Don't be in. One of the things that I appreciated about how Sanatana Goswami did what he did is he didn't make the judgment. The person spoke about themselves. We should be very careful. Say it stronger. We can very easily make offense by making such judgments. Perfect, more perfect, most perfect. We should just see perfect. From our position, we should see perfect. That's what Sanatana Goswami is doing in his commentary. Although they're saying about themselves, then their statements lead to the gopis are most perfect. We can hear from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also, same conclusion, because that's the conclusion of the Bhagavatam. The Bhagavatam says the love of the gopis is most exalted. Mahaprabhu described the love of the gopis is most exalted. Does that mean Mother Yasoda is second rate? She had love for Krishna, but like, really nothing compared to the gopis. That's offensive. One whose love is pure may be in in different rasa, or even in different degrees of intensity. Prabhupada would speak about variety is the mother of enjoyment. Variety is the mother of enjoyment. And raso vai saha, according to Shruti mantras, the absolute truth, saha, is rasa. Or Krishna is Rasaraj. He's the emperor of all rasa. Rasa means mellow. And all mellows reside in him. Really what rasa is you bump into a rasgulla, you get juicy. But it's the rasgulla that's juicy, not you. You just bumped into the rasgulla. Krishna is rasa. What we experience is our relationship with Krishna because he's everything. And he enjoys variety. He doesn't enjoy only gopis or Mother Jasoda or cows. And that's it, it's just cows. It's all variety. He's complete. And his happiness is in that completeness. His happiness is complete. And there's varieties amongst those categories. Unlimited varieties. Unlimited variety because he's complete in everything. So, and that he is complete in everything, which is more perfect, most perfect. Be very careful. We can hear from Rupa Goswami. And just hear from Rupa Goswami, that's sufficient. Don't get in the Rupa Goswami driver's seat. You put your hand on the steering wheel and try to navigate your way through Rasa Tattva. We can hear from our great acharyas, these subject matters, and have equal appreciation. That's again, Prabhupada saying, we're interested in the Virat Rupa. It's there in one whole chapter of 18 chapters of Bhagavad Gita, and a whole section of it in Mahabharata, both with Duryodhana seeing a partial manifestation of it. Then again, in the Bhagavatam, the whole section, the whole chapter in Canto 2 on universal form is important. If it's not important, it wouldn't be in the Bhagavatam. So we value it. We don't devalue it in contrast with the 10th canto. The first two cantos are lotus feet of the Supreme Lord. So what, I'm supposed to disregard the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord and just look at his face? That's offensive. We don't do that. Your second question?
Part 2. As you're speaking about the humility, bhakti that attracts the Supreme Lord, what is the relation between bhakti and humility?
Humility is at the beginning. Without humility, there isn't bhakti. It's a subset. Proper humility in the association of devotees leads to bhakti. That's Jiva Goswami. It's not bhakti in itself, but it's the beginning. It's a quality that's exhibited when bhakti begins. And it continues to grow as bhakti grows. Not like I did that when I was a little new devotee. Now I'm not humble anymore because I got to be big. It's a symptom of bhakti's beginning. Anything else? Yes?
Maharaj, like everything, humility is the first step, but what I'm thinking is that we are already right now in the false humility, and there seems like a big gap to reach to the real humility. So,
right.
What should we strive for right now? Because
lotus feet of the Supreme Lord. You got to be humble to get there.
How to stroke for humbleness? What kind of humbleness I can have? Because hearing I can do, but in reality,
Hearing is the beginning. That's how the process begins. Shravanam. You're at the right place. Hearing. And then the hearing comes application of the hearing. Oh, I have to apply what I hear. Yeah, the hearing, and then we apply it. It's making it's. There's Canto 3, Chapter 29, verse 14. I'll send it to you. But it's a series of verses where Kapila Deva is responding to Devahuti. Her question is, Bhakti is pure, that's 28. Is it possible that Bhakti can be mixed with the modes of nature, which aren't pure? He says, sure. Bhakti is pure. It doesn't make Bhakti less than pure, but one may be influenced. Consciousness of the jiva may be influenced by the modes of nature. So then Bhakti according to the modes of nature starts with ignorance, passion, goodness. Unmixed Bhakti. And then there's some glorification of that unmixed Bhakti, and then it gives some verses that describe the cultivation of that unmixed Bhakti, which is what your question is. And one of those verses, very, I like one of my favorite verses lately, is by that process of hearing, which you described, one should hear through the lens of looking inside and seeing where are strengths and where there's weaknesses. Not somebody else. Me. Introspection. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's term is antar karana. Karna, is causation. And antar karna is causation within, as false ego. And the material mind and material intelligence. Antar karna, subtle body. So where's their strengths or qualities and faults? Guna and dosha. And recognizing where the doshas are, to overcome those doshas on the strength of good association. And other things that are mentioned. So that's how to go beyond, the gap. There's those, first recognize where we are by sincere, earnest hearing for the purpose, not beating ourselves up, but being realistic about antakarana. Where's there some strength? And let me exercise that strength. Where is there something that's not so good? Doshas. And then the additional things are there to help, but specifically, emphasis is placed upon, instead of saying sadhu sangha, he uses a different term that means the same thing. It's arya sangena. Same thing. And in that association of Aryans, hearing and then applying that which will help me overcome my weaknesses, and then staying with it. And there's a whole description of the sadhana of staying with it. The sadhana of staying with it has three parts. There's a science to all of this. So it's sustained over time, regularly, like daily, and with some faith, conviction that this is going to cure me of my weaknesses, my doshas. Like taking medicine. there's the mechanical taking medicine, and it's medical healing. How is enhanced for those who have faith in the physician, and the treatment is coming from the physician. So it's important to have faith in the physician that you're going to, not just go to a physician mechanically. It helps in the healing process, and ultimately, faith in God. That's how to close the gap. It takes time. But one who has faith and can stay with the process because they have faith. This is just like another way of saying the same thing. That's detail, but a shorter version is nectar of instruction. Uttahandas chaya dharyat. That's how. And that dharyat is very important. Dhira has the same root. I have conviction. But with conviction, I can be simultaneously enthusiastic and patient. Which sounds like go, stop. Not go, stop. It's enthusiasm, and I'm patient for the result to come. Why? Because I have conviction. And that conviction comes through good association. And good association gives gives strength beyond my strength. Not just wisdom, but strength beyond my strength. I have confidence in that. I'm going to stay with it. Dhira or Dhairyat. You know the description in Chaitanya Charitamrita about Mukunda? There was a disciple, not Mukunda Datta, but Mukunda. So there was different Mukundas, but there was a Mukunda that had a tendency to go here and there, and here at different places. And so during this very wonderful Leela of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu giving his blessings to different devotees, he didn't call Mukunda. So they were saying, why haven't you called Mukunda? He said he likes to go here and there, and I don't even want to see him. I never want to see Mukunda again. So they relate that reluctantly to Mukunda. Lord doesn't want to see you again. So he asked him, can you just ask him when, even if it's hundreds of lifetimes, thousands of lifetimes? Lord Chaitanya in anger said, after 1,000 lifetimes, Mukunda started dancing. After 1,000 lifetimes, I'll again leave Lord Chaitanya's association. That was reported to Lord Chaitanya. He said, bring Mukunda. You have such faith in me. Now stop this going here and there. However long it takes, in other words. Why? Because I have confidence, I have faith in these teachings and the persons giving the teachings and the process. I'm going to stay with it. That will help us get beyond, the gap. Good association strengthened by or focused by conviction. Dharyat. I can tolerate even there's cause for being disturbed. I can tolerate it. Why? There's this higher principle I've taken shelter of. Easy to say, huh? That's another thing to do. But that can carry us beyond our own limitations. Yes?
So we are entangled with the three modes acting on us all the time.
Yes.
And it keeps changing also.
Yes.
saw one of
Yes.
So humility, to become a humility, it is a quality of goodness.
Yes, it is.
We have to bring that all the time to keep us all the time. It's like we
Well,
should be.
the ultimate, there's two things simultaneously. Ultimately taking shelter. Because alone we're going to lose. We're going to lose. So we can cross beyond if we take shelter. That's number one. That's. Then, with that view in mind, we try our best to frame our life in the quality of goodness. And the quality of goodness has certain characteristics. Cleanliness, regulation, etc. Truthfulness, compassion, cultivation of knowledge. Straight textbook stuff. Mode of goodness. Speak pleasingly. Even when speaking the truth, speak pleasingly. That's a challenge. But we cultivate. We frame our life in the quality of goodness. And there's strength in that. Especially when, at the center is taking shelter of Krishna. It helps us stay in the taking shelter of Krishna mood, that humility. It helps. That's what's going to energize the other effort. Like the soul energizes the body. If the soul leaves the body, it's inanimate, dead. Bhakti is the life of humility, or a life of goodness. It's not just goodness, it's devotion to the personality of Godhead, nourished by these efforts for, that's the incubation chamber, the womb, in which bhakti will best grow. The mode of goodness. And we have our nature that may not be the mode of goodness. And so then we have to connect according to religious principle. That's then connecting that less than goodness or other than goodness nature with Dharma. We live religiously. That was so back. It's that which will sustain it is bhakti. Humility is I recognize I don't have the strength to do this. I require Krishna's mercy. Exactly how prahalad begins. Exactly. Okay.
Maharaj, Prahlad Maharaj was born in a donkey's family.
He was born in a Kshatriya family, but in a demon Kshatriya.
And then, because of bhakti, he became an exalted.
Because of association with Narada, while within the womb of his mother, he became exalted.
The confusion is, often we hear stories about persons who aren't qualified by birth, but by the process of bhakti become exalted.
Yeah.
But then, often those souls don't seem like jivas like us.
Yes, it does. There's some that are and some that aren't. There's some that are and some that are not. And ultimately, it doesn't matter. In other words, Prabhupada said, whether one becomes perfect by devotional practice, that's sadhana, siddha, or kripa siddha, one becomes perfect by mercy, or nitya siddha, eternally perfect. Siddha is siddha. They don't have show their credential. I'm a card carrying sadhana siddha. Oh, well, I'm a nitya siddha. They don't do that.
Because it seems that they give us those examples to inspire us that bhakti is so powerful. But then if you're already in the internal associate Krishna.
Yeah, then it's special. So we can, if you like, we can make a short list, then a medium list, and then a long list from scripture of persons that aren't eternally perfect souls that just are performing a pastime with Krishna that then become perfect, but actually they're already perfect, just like pretending they're not. Magari the hunter, you know that one? There's many, there's many. Haridas Thakur converted a prostitute to a pure devotee by his association. She wasn't like the perfect person pretending to be a prostitute. She was a prostitute. And her intention was to have union with Haridas and then disgrace him. That was her assignment. And she was like, I can do it. I'm good. Through Haridas's association, she became different. Totally different. Etc. Narada himself. He was a Gandharva, then he became a Sudra, then he became Narada Muni. But the Gandharva, although he was in a heavenly realm, he was very disqualified. A womanizer. Woo, woo, woo. Unfit for the heavenly planets. Take birth in the earthly realm as a Shudra. Then you're a Shudra. That's suited for you. There's another, etc.
Maharaj, a couple of questions relating to racism.
She's still got a question mark on her forehead, I think.
Oh,
Are you okay? Okay, okay.
So, on the point of bhakti is the driving force behind imparting values to children. Lately, with our homeschooling co-op, we've been doing a lot of interfaith trips, so we visit other religious institutions and learn about it. So there's the Mormons, the Orthodox Jewish, the Amish that are very good, it seems, at imparting values to their children. And we see, like in WashU, children like from Orthodox Jewish families, even though parents are not around anymore, very dedicated to their practices, to their principles. So, one of the things that's common in like all these two communities is it seems everything else is great except they eat meat, and it's almost part of their culture to sacrifice animals. And so where are these children heading? They're very dedicated to the values they've been raised with. With this,
I'm listening for the punchline of your question very carefully. What's the punchline of your question?
What is the future of these children that seem to be
What's their next life going to be? That's your question?
Yes.
That's your question. Probably take birth in another Jewish family. My understanding is limited, but my understanding is that specifically the Jewish tradition says same thing that Prabhupada says. Religion means laws given by God, and a religious person follows the laws given by God. So you have to know what the laws are, and follow the laws, and then you're a religious person. So they have a particular, catechism that, set of what the laws of God are, and they follow them as their teachings give. And therefore, they're religious, and then the fruits of that religion is they will prosper. That's, that's the carrot. And they prosper. But they also have some hardship. So they have their whole liturgy about why that hardship is there. Historically, Jewish people have been put through a lot in the world while they're prospering. has something to do with this item that you're speaking of. While they're being religious, they have this idea of without doing into the graphics. If you do it in a certain way, it's okay. Hang the animal upside down and then do it. And it's kosher. As long as this doesn't mix with that. But people that are more refined have a greater responsibility. So as a short answer to your question is have to suffer in some form or another, and take birth in a way that they're attached to, possibly. And there's some consequence for that animal killing, for sure. There's some benefit that comes from that piety, for sure. Fastidious following of laws given by God as they've received them in their tradition. There's benefit. And these, Janma, Aishvar, and Shruta, and Shri. Something else? Yes?
You were speaking about violence in videos, what we're noticing. So of course we have, completely transcendental sections in the Bhagavatam that are, very gruesome. My voice, for example.
They love it.
That's all they want to read in the Bhagavatam is the battle scenes.
Right.
For first in the 12th canto, all the battle scenes only. So it brings out some violent behavior.
I've observed. I don't live in your home.
So, the attractions of Bhagavatam is to be encouraged, and we, while giving them complete faith that, it's all transcendental, making that discrimination of, we can't.
Don't discount the name and the form and the qualities and the pastimes of the Supreme Lord. That's the purifying element. As a discriminating mother, somebody, not you, but somebody might say, well, I'm not going to read those sections of the Bhagavatam or Ramayana to my sons because they may get violent. I'll just read the other stuff. You're not going to do that. But someone may do that. Doesn't mean that propensity that's there in a boy isn't going to find another outlet. Better to find that outlet in the medium of the personality of Godhead. Because part of that, in the Ramayana and in the Mahabharata, there's all this again and again and again consideration of Dharma, proper and not improper exhibition of that chivalrous spirit. It's one of the secondary rasas. It's there. So where does it have its place? Dharmic, and otherwise not. And that's part of the value that needs to be instructed along with the stories. You make a special point to point out these considerations and those considerations that Ram made or Sita made or Arjuna made or Yudhishthira made, or they didn't exhibit that in this case. Why didn't they? I don't know. I wish they did. Here's why. And I have them say it back. Anyway, how will you instruct your children or pass on down this? Otherwise, they'll find it some other way. Plenty of it. Okay. Thank you very much.
His Holiness Prabhupada Maharaj.